One of the well-known haunted places in Victoria is the Cherrybank Hotel. And the whole place, the restaurant, the bar, and the hotel are all very, very haunted. One of the rooms seems to be particularly haunted, just a small room. And it was in that room that an elderly couple had checked in, and during the evening, his wife woke up. She heard some noise. It sounded like a scuffling sound. Something was moving in the room. She checked. Her husband was sound asleep. It wasn't him, but there just seemed to be something in the room. She knew that the door was locked and didn't give it much thought. She finally went back to sleep. When they woke up, the couple were quite alarmed to discover that the bathroom door was off its hinges. And it wasn't just off as if it had fallen off. It had actually physically been lifted up and moved several feet, pins and all, and was propped up against the bedroom wall. Lady knew that her husband was not capable of doing this. He hadn't done it. And the door to the outside hallway was still securely locked. She'd heard something in the night. What had it been? No one could explain why. And it's only happened that once. But that room is also the scene of other hauntings as well. And it's become quite well known as a place where people go if they're looking for a haunted experience. It's the Cherrybank Hotel. It was built as a house, just on the edge of downtown, only 3 blocks from the inner harbor, back in the late 1890s. And at some point during its career, it became a small hotel. In the corridor, just at the top of the stairway, people have seen the ghost of a small girl. She seems to wander along the corridor. Some people have heard her talking, but she seems to vanish. She doesn't seem to cause any problems, but people assume that it's one of the children from the household when the family lived there in the 1890s and early 1900s.
I'm Barbara Philby. I'm the manager of the Cherrybank Hotel. I've worked here for approximately 20 years. One of the things that happened, people saying that they saw someone in the night walking down the hallways, feeling like there was a presence in their room, one of the rooms being room number 4. I do know quite a few of the stories that I've heard from staff, customers, previous staff, present staff.
The first hauntings were probably noted shortly after Miss Lynn Hamber, one of the permanent residents of the Cherrybank Hotel, died in the early 1960s. She was from a very prominent family and had lived there for a number of years. When she died, her room was converted into a banquet room. They call it the Flapper Room. It's on the main floor of the hotel. And little things began to happen at first that made people wonder if perhaps Miss Hamber really was a permanent guest for all time.
My name's Kevin Fry, and I've been the musical director at the Cherrybank since 1989. I was this lady that lived in the Flapper Room back when it used to be a private suite. And she lived there for years and years and years. And she died, and we think that her spirit is what is actually causing the Flapper Room to get rearranged. There was a busgirl who was working here a few years ago, and she was setting up the dining room across the hall for a party. And we have a way of setting up the silverware that goes just thus and so on the places. And she was new, inexperienced, and she hadn't set it up the same way. So she came out of the room and went back into the room and looked, and it had all been changed. So she changed it back the way she thought it should be. Came around, went back into the room. About 2 minutes later, the whole room had been reset again. Well, that girl mailed her uniform back to us, and we haven't seen her since.
The main dining room is on the ground floor of the Cherrybank Hotel, directly across the hall from where Miss Hamber's bedroom used to be. There are small things there as well that make us realize that Miss Hamber and others might still be there.
One of our regular customers used to come in about once a month, and he'd sit over there at table number 9. And he was sitting there one night, and he had his meal, and come to the end of the meal, just as he was signing his bill, he felt an icy cold hand on his shoulder, just like somebody was leaning over his shoulder watching him sign the bill. Well, he gave a great big yell, and he jumped up and looked around, and there was nobody there. And that fella hasn't really come back all that often since. Now, personally, it doesn't bother me to be working in a place that just might be haunted by spirits. But there are some staff members who get kind of creeped out about it. And They don't like being in the place when it's dark or they're alone. And there are even some staff members who have retired in a big hurry immediately after something happens to them.
One of our previous night watchmen had many experiences. The blonde-haired little girl in front of room number 4, he actually saw her and she smiled at him and then ran down the hallway. Immediately was freaked out, but he said he decided to follow her anyway, and when she turned by room number 7 and when he got to that point, she wasn't there, she was gone. And when Jake came along, our present night watchman, and I thought, great, I finally got a night watchman that's very consistent, so I'm feeling pretty good about it until one day I come into work. Jake has had enough, he's out of here. He told the front desk person that was on that he'd had enough, he can't do this job anymore. There's just too much here freaking him out.
I am Jake Andres. I'm a night watchman at Cherrybank Hotel in Victoria, British Columbia. During the winter time, like a couple of years ago, if there's nobody in the hotel, I can hear a footstep upstairs in the hallway, and I am in the dining room, and I can hear some noise walking on the hallways, and I go upstairs, nothing, I didn't see anything.
So I phoned him up and had him come down, and we sat down and I talked to him about what experiences he had had.
I have to check all the empty room every night. So it happens, I have to check this room 4, and I see a shadow. When I open the door, I see a shadow right away. So I had a goosebump right away, and I closed the door right away. So, because I'm scared, because I'm the only one in the hotel, nobody in the hotel, so I'm the only one. Yeah, I had an experience like a couple of 6 months ago, and I have to do all the cleaning, the vacuuming here in the lounge, in the dining room. It happens that I'm vacuuming the hallway. As soon as I finish the vacuuming, I turn it off, and I went to the washroom and cleaned the washroom. So when I finish the washroom cleaning, I hear the vacuum turn it on without any people that turn it on. It turned on by itself. So I look at it, go outside and look at it in the hallways, it's on. So I turn it off. So I said to myself, don't disturb me, I'm working. Somebody's turning on the vacuum, but nobody in the hotel though, see? It's turned on by itself. I don't know who did it.
And so we have a situation where a vacuum cleaner seems to turn itself on by itself. If people believe there are ghosts about, it's very easy to attribute that to the ghost. But we wouldn't think that if suddenly our toaster stopped working or light bulb stopped working or if lights suddenly came on in the house. We look for a natural explanation. When you've got a ghost story at hand, it's all too easy for many people to say, ah, that's the ghost, and not even investigate further, not even look to see whether the switch on the vacuum cleaner is faulty.
The bar at the Cherrybank Hotel is a pretty lively place. It's the second oldest licensed establishment in Victoria. One of the servers told a story about some unusual activity, and the rest of the staff in the hotel didn't really quite believe her.
I've been at the Cherrybank for 16 and a half years and have had several experiences. One afternoon, the phone was ringing, and I was waiting for the hostess to pick it up at the front desk, and I turned around to get the phone, and it just flew off the hook. I picked it up, and there was a dial tone. So I hung up the phone, I went down to the front desk, and I said, why didn't you pick up the phone? And she said, well, it didn't ring. So I told a few people about this. Everybody was thinking I was a little crazy. I said, especially my boss wasn't quite sure.
There's been lots of stories told, the one with the phone and the bar. That just so happens, I truly did not believe that one until I actually saw it.
I was walking along the bar with a couple of drinks. The phone just flew off the hook. I caught it, put it back down, continued on what I was doing. It was getting to the point where it wasn't anything out of the ordinary anymore. And then I had a lot of believers. At least I had witnesses.
But it jumped off the hook, and Kathy caught it in midair as if nothing had happened. That was when I became a true believer.
Once people come to believe that a place is haunted, all these natural little things that don't have any immediately obvious explanation, but surely have a natural explanation, suddenly become the products of the ghost and appear to be solid evidence to the people who believe in the ghost.
One of the haunted rooms at the Cherry Bank Hotel has become well known in town. One student team taking a film course in Victoria decided they were going to do a documentary, and they stayed in the room all evening. They listened. They also had a small tape recorder set up with a diode, hoping that they would hear the energy, hear something when they played it back. And it wasn't until they played the tape back early the next morning that they heard something. It was very faint at first, but as they listened more carefully and played it back again slowly, they realized that it was a small girl's voice.
I'm having a tea party and you're all invited. I'm having a tea party and you're all invited. I'm having a tea party and you're all invited.
And they knew right then that it was worth the wait through the evening. One gentleman was staying at the Cherry Bank Hotel. He didn't know it was haunted. He woke up and he saw, hovering over his bed, the ghost of a man. And then after a few minutes, it just vanished. The Cherry Bank Hotel is a very haunted place and probably has been for many, many years, at least since it's been a hotel. The restaurant, the bar, and even the bedrooms themselves are haunted with many different spirits, including Miss Hamber, who had lived there for many years, the small girl who haunts the upstairs corridor, for example. The Cherry Bank is a very haunted place, and I think is going to be a place that people will come to for a long time to experience ghosts.